These men got 2 life sentences plus 40 years. In the US, that's basically a polite way of saying you're never getting out. Back in 2015, he faced judgment in one of New York's most notorious cases. But earlier this year, he walked free. On his very first day back in office, President Donald Trump granted him a full pardon.
Me, on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht.
The man behind the darknet marketplace, known as Silk Road. Before him, the rise of cryptocurrencies and the global trade of illegal substances online might have unfolded in a completely different way. To many, he's not just a criminal. Some see him as a visionary, even a hero. But why? Why would Trump pardon him? And what's the true story behind the infamous Silk Road? Today, we are diving into the dark legacy of Ross Ulbricht. In ancient times, the Silk Road was a massive trade route connecting Europe all the way to China. Merchants traveled it to exchange silk, gold, species, gunpowder, even slaves. And through it, not only goods spread across continents, but also ideas, and sometimes leaks. Centuries later, Ross Ulbricht decided to revive the same idea, a free market connecting people everywhere. But instead of caravans and camels, his marketplace would live entirely online. In 2010, he wrote this in his personal diary. I first called the project Underground Brokers, but later changed it to Silk Road. The idea is to create a website where people can buy anything they want, completely anonymously, leaving no trace. To make that possible, he needed to build his market on part of the internet that most people never see. The darknet is a hidden layer of the internet, not indexed by search engines, only accessible through special browsers like Tor. Websites there don't have the normal address, they end with .onion, because, like an onion, they are built in layers of encryption. And inside those layers, Ross was about to create one of the most notorious websites in history. On the dark web, Silk Road quickly became something like eBay for illegal stuff. But instead of using normal money, everything was paid for with Bitcoin, a digital currency. Back in 2011, it was mostly used by tech nerds and dreamers who believed in total financial freedom. Ross was one of them. He was obsessed with the idea of decentralized money, a system where no government or bank could interfere. On online forums, he wrote passionately about freedom, privacy, and the right to trade without control. He was also deeply inspired by libertarianism, a political philosophy that rejects government regulation and believes markets, not states, should decide everything. One of his biggest inspirations was a dystopian novel called Alongside Night. In that story, society collapses under its own weight and revolution rises, built on private trade and underground markets. Ross wanted to make that story real. So in 2011, at just 27 years old, he launched his dream project, Silk Road. His mission? To create a place where people could buy or sell anything they wanted, freely, anonymously, and without government interference. The first thing he sold? Magic mushrooms. Ones he grew himself. Hardly anyone noticed Silk Road. It was just another hidden website on the dark web. But then, in February 2011, someone mentioned it on a small Bitcoin forum. A few weeks later, a journalist from Gawker wrote an article titled "The Underground Website, where you can buy any drug imaginable." That article went viral, and overnight, Silk Road exploded. Sorry to interrupt you for just a second, but only about 0.2% of people who watch are actually subscribed. My big goal right now is to hit 1000 subs, and every single one really helps me get there. Alright, back to the story. Suddenly, thousands of people were logging on, not just out of curiosity, but to actually buy drugs. The rules? No violence, no stolen data, no child exploitation. Ross wanted his market to have ethics, a peaceful revolution against the war on drugs, and to keep it all organized. Silk Road worked just like Amazon or eBay. Each vendor had a profile, customer reviews, and star ratings. If you deliver on time and your product was good, your reputation grew, and so did your profits. All of it was wrapped in anonymity thanks to the Bitcoin and Tor. The sellers couldn't see the buyers, The buyers couldn't see the sellers, and no one could see Ross. He operated under a secret alias, Dread Pirate Roberts, named after the mysterious ever-changing outlaw from The Princess Bride. In the story, whenever one Pirate Roberts retires, another takes his place. Ross liked that idea. It made him feel untouchable. To his followers, he wasn't just a website admin anymore. He was a symbol of digital freedom. As Silk Road kept growing, Ross realized he couldn't handle it all alone. Orders were coming in non-stop. Thousands of users joined every week, and the market's total revenue was hitting millions of dollars. So he built a team, moderators, admins, customer support, all hidden behind usernames. No one knew each other's real identity. They communicated only through encrypted messages and code names, just like some kind of secret online syndicate. But with fame came attention, and not just from customers. The FBI, DIA, IRS, and even Homeland Security all started to take notice. They knew something massive was happening on the dark web, but they couldn't figure out who was behind it. Every lead led to another fake name, another layer of encryption, another dead end. Meanwhile, Ross, or Dread Pirate Roberts, was getting deeper into his own world. He started keeping a personal diary, logging every step he took. In one entry he wrote, "I'm running a multi-million-dollar business with no office, no employees, and no government control. It's everything I've ever wanted." But freedom came with paranoia. He was constantly switching apartments, using new laptops, hiding his drivers in safes. He even started to believe that some of his team members might secretly be agents. And the thing is, some of them actually were. For years, Ross managed to stay invisible. No one knew who the real Dread Pirate Robert was. Not the users, not his team, not even the agents chasing him. But in the end, it wasn't high-tech hacking that brought him down. It was small mistakes. Early on, Ross had posted a question on programming forum, asking for help setting up a hidden website that used Bitcoin payments. He would sign it with his real name, Ross Ulbricht. That post stayed online for years, quietly waiting to expose him. Meanwhile, agents from the FBI and DIA were secretly watching every corner of Silk Road. They infiltrated the site, posed as vendors, and even became trusted members of Ross' inner circle. They noticed that every time the site went down for maintenance, the same pattern appeared. One specific API address from San Francisco. Step by step, the digital trail was closing in. By 2013, Silk Road had over 100,000 users and generated more than $1.2 billion in sales. Ross was making an estimated $80 million in commission. He had built an empire, but one built on code, secrets, and paranoia. He didn't know it yet, but the walls were closing in. October 1st, 2013, San Francisco Public Library. Ross Ulbricht sat quietly at a small table, typing on his laptop. To everyone around him, he looked like just another college kid working on his homework. But on that screen, he was running one of the largest criminal marketplaces on Earth. Outside, a team of undercover agents had surrounded the building. They would spend months preparing for this moment. They needed to catch him with his laptop open, because once it was closed, all of Silk Road's encrypted data would disappear forever. So they came up with a plan. Two agents staged a fake argument right next to him. As Ross turned his head to look, another agent sprinted in and grabbed the laptop straight from his hands. It worked. On that computer, investigators found everything. The Silk Road server logs, private messages, Ross' personal diary, and most importantly, the chat history where he signed every message as Dread Pirate Roberts. It was over. After more than 2 years of chasing shadows, the FBI had finally caught the man behind the Silk Road. Ross Ulbricht, 29 years old, was arrested and charged with money laundering, computer hacking, and conspiracy to traffic narcotics. And yet, the story was far from over. The trial began in early 2015 in New York City. Prosecutors presented Ross as a dangerous figure, as someone who had built a massive online black market that fueled addiction and crime. But the defense told a very different story. They argued that Ross only created Silk Road as a philosophical experiment, a proof of concept for free markets and personal liberty. He didn't force anyone to sell or buy drugs. He just created a platform. Still, the evidence was overwhelming. The laptop the agents had seized contained chat logs, Bitcoin wallets, spreadsheets, even his personal journal, where he wrote things like, "I'm struggling to balance my ideas with the reality of running an empire." Then came the most controversial part. Prosecutors claimed Raz had tried to order a hit on one of his employees who threatened to expose him. They never found a body, never proved the murder even happened, but the accusation alone was enough to shock the jury. In 2015, Ross Ulbricht was found guilty on all counts. A few months later, the judge delivered one of the hardest sentences in US history for a non-violent crime. 2 life sentences plus 40 years, without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Ross stood still, no emotion, just a quiet acceptance, as if he already knew this was how it had to end, or maybe how the system wanted to. To some, Ross Ulbricht was nothing more than a criminal who got what he deserved. But to others, especially those in crypto and libertarian communities, he became a symbol of government overreach. They argued that Ross never sold drugs himself, never committed violence, and that his sentence was wildly disproportionate. His family launched a campaign called Free Ross. They traveled the country, spoke at conferences, gathered signatures, and turned Ross' story into a global debate about freedom, privacy, and justice in the digital age. Over the years, thousands of people, from tech leaders to artists to even a former law enforcement, called for his release. But the courts never budged. Then, something no one expected happened. No one really knows why. Trump decided to pardon him. Maybe he saw it as a way to give someone a second chance, but honestly, it probably had more to do with politics. Around that time, crypto was booming again. The online community was loud, influential, and a lot of them saw Ross as a symbol of freedom. So for Trump, pardoning the Bitcoin guy might have seemed like a smart move. Either way it worked. Ross Ulbricht walked out of the prison after more than 10 years behind bars. When he went in, Bitcoin was worth less than $1. When he came out, it was worth tens of thousands. The world had basically caught up with his ideas, just not in the way he expected. Some people see him as a pioneer who pushed the limits of online freedom. Others see him as a criminal who built a billion-dollar drug empire and tried to hide behind ideology. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Ross didn't just build a website, he started a conversation that still hasn't ended. How much freedom is too much, and who gets to decide where the line is? And if Ross Ulbricht built a marketplace that challenged governments, the man in our next story built something even stranger, not for money, not for power, but because he believed God himself told him to. His name was Terry A. Davis. Watch the next video to discover the story of a man who built a computer temple for God.